Part 1. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 1. The flames shot up to the sky. Heart-wrenching screams echoed in her ears, corpses were lying on the ground, broken walls and mountains and rivers were broken. The air was filled with a strong and pungent smell of blood. Zixi, Zixi, Zixi. Who was calling her name tenderly and intimately in her ear? The dull pain in her internal organs and the broken meridians, as if the pain of being tortured by slow slicing, was soothed little by little in this gentle voice. Zixi, Zixi, Zixi. The voice was getting farther and farther away, weaker and weaker, until it disappeared. Wrong you. Nan 11 sat up suddenly, cold sweat on her forehead, fear in her eyes. The person who was usually calm and indifferent, but at this moment, even breathing was uncontrollably rapid. Are you having a nightmare? The noble and cold voice sounded, with a bit of smoke-free breath, like a touch of coolness in the hot summer, breaking into Nan 11's eardrum without warning. Nan 11 turned her head in shock, and met a pair of indifferent eyes that suppressed some emotions. Her thoughts were still confused, and she could not distinguish between reality and dreams. Staring at the handsome man in front of her with cold eyes, Nan 11's mind was blank, and only the lingering agarwood fragrance lingering on the wings of her nose was her familiar breath, as if it was engraved into her bones, lingering and lingering. Nan 11 gently closed her eyes and greedily took a deep breath of the breath that had made her want to escape countless times. Then she slowly opened her eyes, and her eyes gradually became clear, and she could see the man's face more clearly. This was a face as graceful as a startled swan, as beautiful as if it had amazed time. Like a snow lotus, cold and pure, like a cloud crane, noble and elegant, like a blue dragon, unattainable, like Rakshasa, cruel and ruthless. Many words of praise were used on him, all related to his appearance. Many descriptions with awe were completely due to his merits and power. His name is so noble that no one dares to mention it in the whole great Zhou. Rong Yu. Rong is the royal family surname. Rong Yu is the youngest uncle of the current emperor. He is the regent king and the generalissimo of the army of the Great Zhou, holding the military power and the power of the government. The two words Rong Yu represent a heavy weight, the ultimate elegance, the ultimate dignity and strength. But such a person, died so miserably in the end. Nan 11 pursed her lips and turned pale, and a dull pain came over her heart again. It's all because of her. Does my existence really make you so unbearable? Rong Yu looked at her pale face, and the suppressed bottom of his eyes seemed to condense a storm, but his tone was calm and almost indifferent. Nan 11 was startled again, and subconsciously raised her eyes to look at him. The panic in the clear eyes that had not yet faded fell into Rong Yu's sight. The man's thin lips were tightly pursed, and a bitterness appeared on his handsome and noble face. He closed his eyes and turned away resolutely. Rong Yu. Nan 11 spoke, her voice was slightly hoarse, but there was no emotional fluctuation. I have something to tell you. Perhaps even she herself could not believe that she could calm down so quickly in such a short time. Something to say? What? Say that she would never like him in this life, and that as long as she was still alive, she would definitely find a way to leave here? Or, would she rather die than see his disgusting face? Rong Yu clenched his hands, his voice tense. I don't want to listen. You have to listen. Nan 11's voice was calm, but a little tough. If you don't listen, I will write you a divorce letter. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 2. Rong Yu's face suddenly changed, his deep eyes were like a cold pond that had been silent for many years, without any emotional fluctuations, but the cold breath exuded from his body was like a raging wind, so deep that people could not ignore it. Nan 11 moved to the edge of the bed, a pair of snow-white jade feet rested on the footrest made of glazed stone, her clean eyes locked on the man's tall and thin back, her voice calm, "I'm not feeling well, help me put on my socks." Rongyu stood still, because he didn't know what she was thinking. "Your Highness," Nan 11 said lightly, "my feet are cold." Rongyu took a deep breath, turned around and walked to the bed. He was wearing a black woven gold robe, which made him look cold and majestic, but he was as elegant and noble as a nobleman when he raised his hands and feet, which made people addicted. This is a god of war who strategizes on the battlefield and wins thousands of miles away. This is a king who makes decisions in the temple and makes all the civil and military officials submit to him. Although he is not an emperor, he has more of an emperor's aura than the current emperor. But at this moment, he just squatted quietly in front of the bed, lowered his eyebrows and put on Nan 11's socks. He was clearly doing humble work, but he was not dissatisfied at all. Nan 11 lowered her eyes and looked at his perfect and noble profile. She couldn't understand why she hated this face so much before. He was so delicate and handsome, like an ink painting. Rongyu, Nan 11 spoke as if possessed by a ghost. Rongyu raised his head in silence, staring at her beautiful and rosy lips, waiting for the words of resentment and mockery to come out of this bright red mouth, waiting for her to express her hatred for him day after day, waiting for a heart that was already full of holes to continue to be tortured by the words like a knife, waiting. However, accompanied by a faint fragrance, a beautiful and delicate little face gradually enlarged in front of her eyes. Rongyu's pupils shrank slightly, and before he could react, he suddenly felt a cool touch on his lips. Although it was just a touch of a dragonfly, he was frozen like a stone sculpture, and was stunned. The prince is noble, powerful, and handsome. Nan 11 frowned, as if puzzled, why did he hang himself on this crooked tree of mine? Rongyu came back to his senses, his expression was slightly stiff, and then he lowered his head to help her put on her shoes without saying a word, obviously not intending to answer this question. Why doesn't the prince speak? Rongyu pursed his lips and said coldly, "What tricks are you playing?" Nan 11 raised her eyebrows, "Since the prince is so dissatisfied with me, why did he force me to stay in the palace?" Rongyu raised his head and looked at her with deep thought in his eyes. Obviously, he felt that something was wrong with Nan 11 today. "You are not a crooked tree," he said, his tone was dull, and there was no emotional fluctuation. "Then what kind of tree am I?" Nan 11 asked curiously. Rongyu was silent for a moment, as if thinking about this obviously boring question. "You are. Your Highness, Miss Nan is here." Rongyu's face suddenly turned cold, his eyebrows and eyes were sinister, and his aura was cold and fierce, like the god of death from hell. "My sister is here," Nan 11 smiled lightly, "you came at the right time." Rongyu pursed his lips, and a thick layer of frost covered his noble and handsome face. He stood up without saying a word, and his hands hanging in the sleeves of his robes at his sides clenched slightly. Nan 11, however, seemed to have seen nothing at all, and stood up from the edge of the bed and spoke softly, "Your Highness." Rongyu turned his head to look at her, his eyes calm and calm. "Your Highness is too tall, lower your head a little." Nan 11 raised her hand to him. "You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 3. Rongyu looked at her expressionlessly, without any movement. Nan 11 sighed, stood up on tiptoes, put her hands around the back of his neck, then pushed his head down, raised her head and kissed his lips. It was still just a touch like a dragonfly, and the slightest touch was enough. "Leave. Your Majesty's lips are so cold." Nan 11 smiled, "but I quite like this feeling." After saying that, he let go of him, turned around and walked out. Rongyu stood stiffly as if a restraining spell had been cast on her body. For a long time, she raised her hand and stroked her lips as if in a dream, feeling a surging throbbing in her heart. What does she mean? Miss Nan kissed the master. A head popped in from outside the door. It was Qing Yang, Rongyu's personal bodyguard. At this time, he was looking at Rongyu as if he had seen a ghost. Miss Nan actually kissed the master? She is, what stimulation did you receive? Rongyu glanced over at him. Qing Yang was startled and immediately changed his mind. I mean that Miss Nan 11 finally enlightened and saw how good the master was to her. Doesn't Nan 11 hate her master very much? Every time they met, she either scolded or had a cold attitude. She never gave her master a good look, and even his status and power could not deter her. Today I actually took the initiative to kiss my master. Wasn't it because I was stimulated? Rongyu ignored it and walked away indifferently. When he walked outside the door, there was a crisp fragrance lingering in the air. Perhaps his mood was a little different. Rongyu felt that the air today was particularly fresh and pleasant. See how kind he is to her? Rongyu frowned slightly and couldn't help but think about Qin Jiang's words. Was Nan 11 stimulated, or did she really see his good side? In the palace garden. Sister's face looks much paler. Is the regent mistreating her? Nan Yu frowned slightly, her beautiful face full of worry. I'm very worried about my sister. Brother Kingshu asked me to bring you a message. Sister, you must be patient and never conflict with the regent. He is a murderous evil god who doesn't blink an eye. Hearing the familiar voice in her ears and looking at this face that she could never forget in this life, Nan 11 felt as if she was in another world for a moment. How ironic. The past life and the present life, the two lifetimes, are actually just experienced between closing the eyes and opening the eyes. Nan 11 turned to look at the huge garden. Every time she met Nan Yu in the past, she always chose to speak here to avoid being overheard. So every time Nan Yu came later, she would just ask her servants to lead her to the garden so that she could talk more easily. Nan 11 took a breath. It felt good to be alive. It felt even better to live before knowing the truth and before the tragedy happened. Sister, what's wrong with you? Nan Yu was a little puzzled when she saw that she didn't speak. Why don't you speak? Nan 11 came back to her senses and her eyes fell on the face of the woman in front of her. The regent is very kind to me, Nan 11 said. I have not suffered any grievances. Very good. Nan Yu raised her voice in an excited tone. He took you into the house by force because of his status, causing your sister to lose all her reputation. Fortunately, Kingshu's brother loves his sister deeply, so he doesn't care about losing his reputation. Sister, is this a good call? If it's because I'm afraid of angering him, Why are you excited? Nan 11 looked at her calmly. Gu Kingshu loves me deeply, so even if I lose my reputation, he doesn't care. This. Nan Yu's expression changed slightly, and her eyes were a bit erratic. Of course I don't care. My sister doesn't believe in the regent. Don't you still believe in Brother Kingshu? The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 4. Of course I believe Gu Kingshu. Nan 11 smiled slightly. What did Kingshu ask you to tell me? Nan Yu heard that she finally asked the main question, and she was relieved in her heart, and her face changed to a sincere and weak look. It's like this, Brother Kingshu said that my sister is now in the regent's mansion and can't leave. The regent is a fierce and evil man, and we can't force him. Speak to the point, Nan 11 interrupted her. Nan Yu choked and looked at Nan 11 with some suspicion. She always felt that she looked a little different today, but the things she was worried about were more important than this, so she quickly put aside her doubts and said softly, Brother Kingshu meant that if I can recognize my ancestors with my mother as soon as possible, I can better help my sister and arrange Brother Kingshu's career. Nan 11 understood. She was reborn 1 month after being abducted into the mansion by the regent, and before Nan Yu's concubine's mother took Nan Yu to the Prime Minister's mansion to recognize her ancestors. The woman in front of her, who was nominally her sister, was actually the daughter of a woman raised outside by her philandering father. She was not even a concubine's daughter, but in the previous life, because of Gu Qingshu, Nan 11 took good care of the sister and had a few years of sisterly love. She agreed to let her mother and daughter enter the mansion and agreed to let her become the legitimate daughter of the Xiongfu. Although she was a concubine's daughter, she really stepped into the circle of the powerful in the imperial capital. Even when Nan 11 was helplessly trapped in the regent's mansion, it was Nan Yu, the concubine's daughter, who took Nan 11's place to deal with the wives of the powerful and wealthy ladies in the imperial capital and build good relationships with those people, helping Gu Qingshu expand his network of contacts in the imperial capital, and even got a large amount of money from her mother in the name of Nan 11, and used the power of the Xiongfu to help Gu Qingshu rise to prominence. If Nan 11 closed her eyes and counted them carefully, she would probably not be able to count them for days and nights. How many benefits did Nan Yu and Gu Qingshu get by using her identity? However, it was really sad and ridiculous. Her deep love was ultimately rewarded with a ruthless heart, and the deep sisterly love was only repaid with ingratitude. Nan 11 almost wanted to stab this black-hearted White Lotus directly. Want to recognize your ancestors and help Gu Qingshu's career, Nan 11 suppressed her impulse and raised a smile at the corner of her lips. So, sister, you have something to ask of me. Nan Yu was stunned, not quite understanding what she meant. What does it mean to have something to ask of her? In the past, didn't Nan 11 agree to all her requests as long as she said it? If she hadn't been concerned about Nan 11's stubborn and annoying merchant mother, why would she need to come here to ask for her help? Her father was eager to take them mother and daughter into the mansion as soon as possible. Why doesn't my sister speak? Nan 11 raised an eyebrow. Nan Yu came back to her senses, frowned and looked at Nan 11's expression. What's wrong with sister? Why does she seem a little bit strange today? Just answer my question. Nan Yu was angry, pursed her lips, and suppressed her expression. Yes, I have a request to ask sister, but it's all for Brother Qingshu. Brother Qingshu is worried about sister's safety, so he is trying to deal with the regent, but sister knows that the regent is extremely powerful and kills without blinking an eye. Qingshu needs to plan carefully. Powerful. Kill without blinking an eye? Nan 11 sneered, and she really didn't miss any opportunity to slander the regent in front of her. She was indeed stupid before, blinded by the so-called love, thinking that what Nan Yu said was true. Over time, Rong Yu became a demon-like existence in her heart. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 5. What is love? Men are willing to lower their status in order to gain benefits, and blurt out sweet words against their will again and again. After 10 years of hard study, the descriptions of love in ancient poems can be used without any thought. It's so cheap. Nan 11 raised her hand slightly, lowered her eyes and stared at her ice blue wide sleeves, and said calmly, since it's for Gu Qingshu, why did my sister hurt me? What? Harm you? Nan Yu widened her eyes in surprise, and then she defended herself aggrievedly. Sister, what are you talking about? When did I want to harm you? Is it the regent who deliberately provoked our sisterly feelings in front of you? Sister, we are a family, you must not listen to the one-sided words of outsiders. Really? Nan 11 raised her lips, turned her wrist, and handed a dagger to Nan Yu. Do you recognize this, sister? In a corner of the garden, Rong Yu saw the dagger in Nan 11's hand, and his thin lips pursed up suddenly. Qing Yang beside him took a step back unconsciously, gritted his teeth and cursed. Miss Nan 11 is really acting with the master, she is really a drama queen, hateful and hateful. I really don't know why the master likes such a girl. And she must be the only one. The daughter of the powerful family in the imperial capital must be dignified and dignified, talented, and most importantly, obedient. Why does the master have to hang herself on this crooked tree? I recognize it. Nan Yu's eyes turned slightly, and she smiled faintly at the dagger in Nan 11's hand. Isn't this the one that Brother Kingshu gave to me for self-defense? Who said that this was given to me by Gu Kingshu? Nan 11 took a step closer and stood face to face with Nan Yu. It was obviously my sister who brought the dagger to assassinate me. What? Nan Yu was stunned. What did my sister say? Nan 11 suddenly raised her hand. Nan Yu was startled, thinking that Nan 11 was going to hit her, and subconsciously stretched out her hand to stop her. What are you going to do, sister? Swish. The dagger passed through Nan 11's arm, and then fell to the ground with a clang. Pain came. Nan 11 covered her wrist injury with one hand, and looked at Nan Yu with a sad and unbelievable look. Sister wants to kill me. Qing Yang, who was secretly watching the whole process, was stunned. What is going on? Sisters love and kill each other? Master, what's going on? Qing Yang looked up at Rong Yu. Before he finished speaking, a black shadow flashed in front of him, and his master had disappeared in front of him. Nan Yu was also stiff, staring blankly at the scene in front of her, shocked and unable to react. The next moment, accompanied by a scream from a maid, "Ah! Someone come! Come quickly! Miss Nan is injured, come quickly!" Nan Yu had just come to her senses and had no time to speak, when she suddenly felt a sharp pain in her chest. She was kicked out before she could react, and a mouthful of blood spurted out, and she fainted in front of her eyes. Nan 11's slender body was pulled into a wide embrace. The man held her tightly, and his tall body rushed towards the direction of the bedroom. The clear and pleasant breath lingered at the tip of her nose. Nan 11 leaned quietly in his arms, feeling his eagerness. The wind whistled in her ears, but she only felt calm. Call the court doctor, Rong Yu said coldly. His usually dignified and indifferent face only showed gloomy anger, and his calmness was often destroyed when facing Nan 11. Nan 11 raised his uninjured right hand and gently stroked his noble and handsome face. I know a little bit of medical skills myself, and bandaging a wound is not a difficult thing. Why do we need to alert the court doctor? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 6. Rong Yu's expression was very cold at this time, so cold that it pierced his bones. If Nan 11 didn't know him better than she knew herself, she would probably hold her breath for 3 minutes at this time. But this man, in his previous life, took out his heart and put it in front of her, but she didn't cherish it. In this life, she needs to protect this heart well, not only his heart, but also his people, so that all those who dare to plot against them will be wiped out. Qing Yang, who witnessed the whole process in the garden, was still standing blankly, blinking, and couldn't help blinking again, then raised his hand and pulled his face hard, which was indeed a little painful, and then he looked up in a daze. The sun was shining, coming from the east, and there was no red rain. What evil had suddenly happened to Miss Nan 11? Scratching her arm with a dagger and blaming Nan Yu. This kind of white lotus trick is really hard to describe, but his prince seemed to really think that he was blind and kicked Nan Yu away with one foot. He felt that he needed to be quiet. Nan 11 had not been normal since she woke up today. Who knows what will happen next? No, he has to protect the master. What if Nan 11 hurts the master? Thinking this in his heart, Qing Yang ignored the unlucky Miss Nan and walked quickly towards the main hall. Rong Yu carried Nan 11 into the inner hall, put her on the edge of the bed, and reached out to untie her clothes. Nan 11 raised her hand to stop him. Your Highness, don't you ask why. She raised her eyes and looked at him. Her eyes were calm, but it seemed to contain thousands of words of emotion. Your Highness should have seen what happened in the garden just now. Wrong, you did see it, but so what? Nan 11 was injured, so Nan Yu was the culprit. As for the process and facts, he didn't want to know. Your Highness, don't you have anything to ask me? Wrong Yu pursed his lips, his eyes locked on her bleeding arm. His plain light-colored wide sleeves were already stained red with blood. His eyes darkened by 3 points, and his voice was suppressed. Treat the wound first. Nan 11 insisted, Your Highness, answer my question first. What question? Your Highness, don't you feel strange at all about my attitude today? Wrong Yu pursed his lips and answered along with her words, It is indeed strange. Then why doesn't your Highness ask me the reason? There is nothing to ask, he said. You are you, different from others. Be good, treat the wound first. Be good. Nan 11's scalp was numb, and she had no idea how this word came out of his mouth. In her past and present lives, this was the first time she heard someone talk to her like this. It was like coaxing a child. Seeing that he was really anxious about her wound, Nan 11 softened her heart and stopped insisting, Please bring the medicine box over, Your Highness. Wrong Yu turned around to get the medicine box. Nan 11 leaned against the bedside and chatted with him in a leisurely tone, Is Nan Yu dead? No. Wrong Yu came back with the medicine box, opened it, took out the gauze from it, and looked up at Nan 11. Nan 11 didn't say anything, and took out a pair of scissors from the bottom layer of the medicine box. It's troublesome to take off my clothes, please help me cut my sleeves, Your Majesty. Wrong Yu put down the gauze, took the scissors, knelt down in front of the bed, and began to cut Nan 11's sleeves. Nan 11 looked at him closely, and the more she looked, the more she felt that this beautiful face was very attractive and hard to find in the world. I want to go back to the Prime Minister's mansion tomorrow, Nan 11 said. Does the prince agree? Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 7. Wrong Yu's movements stiffened, and his noble and ascetic appearance darkened visibly, like a sign of an approaching storm. Does the prince think that my goodwill today is just to exchange for the opportunity to return to the Prime Minister's house? Nan 11 said calmly, Actually, no, I have something to do, and the prince doesn't think that our current relationship is unjust. Is it okay? What do you mean, Miss Nan? Qing Yang, who heard these words as soon as he walked into the palace, finally couldn't help but speak with an angry and dissatisfied tone. After all, you just want to find a chance to escape from the master, and the master will take out his heart. Lung, why don't you appreciate you at all? Do you really think that Gu Qingshu is a good person? He is not as good as a toe in front of my prince. Are you blind and chose the fish head instead of the pearl? Wrong Yu said coldly, Shut up. Qing Yang closed his mouth bitterly, with an obvious hint of dissatisfaction on his face. He said it must not be that simple. Really? Deliberately stabbing yourself with a dagger to make your master soft-hearted? Qing Yang is right. Nan 11 smiled lightly, I was blind before, so I gave up pearls and chose fish eyes. Ah! Qing Yang was stunned and stared at her suspiciously. She actually agreed that what he said was right. Your Majesty, you should know that my mother is a merchant girl, and her status is far different from that of a famous and powerful person. Nan 11 said, My romantic and lustful father was also a poor boy back then. Because of his outstanding literary talent and suave style, he got me. My mother was infatuated with her, and my mother and I were in love with each other. My mother devoted a lot to his career and devoted herself to him. She spent an unknown amount of money on him. My father was also able to live up to his expectations and came out on top in the imperial examination. Won the first prize in one fell swoop, and then his official career went smoothly, and he became the prime minister within 10 years. Rong Yu didn't say anything. He knew everything Nan 11 said. He also knew that the reason why Nan Xingzi was able to take the position of prime minister so quickly was not only the financial help from Nan 11's mother, but also the fact that Nan Xingzi himself was so versatile. Long-sleeved and good at dancing, and the most important thing is his ability to follow the dragon. The reason why today's emperor can stand out among many princes and successfully sit on the throne is due to Nan Xingzi's contribution. Therefore, soon after the new emperor succeeded to the throne, he generously rewarded and promoted Nan Xingzi. He continued to be favored and was in the limelight for a while. However, in the final analysis, whether Nan Xingzi can enjoy himself among the dignitaries all over the imperial capital, and whether he can fully support the new emperor in the prince's struggle to seize the rightful son, he relies on the support of his wife's huge wealth. My father is now prominent. He is the most powerful prime minister of a country. He is so prominent that he is cheered before and after he goes out. He is really the envy of the world. Nan 11 chuckled, with a trace of ridicule in her eyes. Bewitched by power, beauty, wealth, and honor, he has long forgotten that he made a promise to my mother when he was very poor and had nothing to do with it. He forgot about my mother's deep love. He always despised my mother as a merchant girl who smelled like copper and was not worthy of his status. He brought beautiful concubines into the house one by one. Not to mention, even the mother and daughter raised outside want to break into the house. The prime minister is really a scumbag. Qing Yang curled his lips. He is ungrateful, unkind, unjust, and cruel. I despise him. Nan 11 smiled lightly. That's why I want to go back. I can't let my mother be bullied, right? Miss Nan 11 is right, bad women cannot be allowed to enter the house. Qing Yang nodded subconsciously, then shuddered. Ah, what will happen to my prince when you go back? The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 8. Nan 11 lowered her eyes and looked at Rong Yu, who was silent. The man's noble and handsome profile looked like an ink painting, exquisite and elegant everywhere, and it was pleasing to the eye. But at this time, his tightly pursed lips showed the owner's gloomy mood, as if he had suffered some grievances. I live in Jinlan Garden in the east courtyard of the Xiongfu, close to my mother's Tingyu Pavilion. Nan 11 spoke slowly, her voice calm and soft. If the prince wants to see me, you can come to me at any time. Qing Yang's eyes widened. Miss Nan, what do you mean? Let my master sneak into the boudoir at midnight and be a flower thief? As soon as the voice fell, he suddenly met Rong Yu's cold eyes. Qing Yang's neck shrank, and he retracted his head obediently. Nan 11 turned his head and glanced at his arm. The wound had been carefully cleaned and bandaged. Although Rong Yu was a noble prince, he was also a commander who had led troops to the battlefield. It was inevitable to be injured in the battlefield, so he still had the skills to treat the wound. It's not right for me to live in the palace. It's not good for the prince, and it's not good for my reputation. Nan 11 said calmly, wait until I deal with the family affairs. If the prince is willing, he can go to the prime minister's mansion to propose marriage. Propose marriage? Rong Yu was shocked and suddenly looked up at her, as if to explore the truth of her words. Qing Yang, who was standing outside the screen, was also refreshed. Propose marriage? Miss Nan 11 was indeed stimulated. No, no, the surprise came too suddenly. I'm afraid it's a trick. He had to stay calm. What was Miss Nan 11 planning? She wouldn't deliberately say nice things to coax his master, and then think of some tricks to deal with his master, right? If that's the case, it would be too hateful. The prince has beauty and power. There's no reason for me to repeat my mother's tragedy while the prince doesn't like it. Nan 11 just wanted to reassure Rong Yu at this time, so her words were particularly sincere. which was her true feelings from the heart after she woke up. She felt that no expression was more convincing than words and actions, and it was too early to talk about actions, so she first showed weakness in words, so that he would let down his guard and try to trust her. In fact, Nan 11 was overthinking about this. Rong Yu always obeyed her requests, except leaving the palace. It was just that Nan 11 never bothered to make any requests to him before. The only thing she insisted on was to escape from the regent palace, which Rong Yu did not allow. At this time, she took the initiative to lower her status and speak, which was a surprise to Rong Yu, as if it foreshadowed a good start for the two of them. No matter whether what she said was from the heart or she had other ideas, Rong Yu would not refuse her. Besides, she said she wanted to marry. "Master, what should we do with Miss Nan Er?" Qingyang couldn't help but ask again. "Should we send her back to the Prime Minister's mansion?" "Why send her back to the Prime Minister's mansion?" Rong Yu smiled faintly. "She doesn't live in the Prime Minister's mansion." "Where should we send her?" Qingyang muttered. "If we let her stay in the palace, we have to send someone to take care of her. How is her injury?" Qingyang thought about it. If it were normal, the power of the master's kick would be enough to kill a 7-foot-tall man instantly, but probably because he took into account that she was Nan 11's sister, and Nan 11 had taken good care of the sister in the past, so his master withdrew 7 points of strength, probably just breaking her hands and feet. "Maybe she will be disabled," Qingyang guessed, and then, as if he was worried that Nan 11 would be unhappy, he hurriedly explained, "But this can't be blamed on the master." The master saw that the girl was injured and was anxious for a while. "I know." Nan 11 smiled lightly. "Since she is injured, send her to the Gu mansion for the time being." You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 9. Send her to Gu mansion? Qingyang blinked, as if he couldn't understand Miss Nan 11's decision. Gu mansion is the residence of Gu Qingshu. This young and promising champion is the new favorite of the emperor. But outside the regent's mansion, the hot topic is all about this Master Gu. Everyone in the imperial capital knows that the newly promoted champion Gu Qingshu and Miss Nan 11 from the Prime Minister's mansion are in love with each other and have reached the stage of discussing marriage. But a month ago, Miss Nan 11 was forcibly brought into the palace by the regent. As a result, the young masters of the imperial capital's aristocratic families who have a good relationship with Gu Qingshu are all standing up for him, saying that the regent has power over the court and the country, has no respect for the law, and has forcibly seized the ministers. He relies on the military power in his hands to act tyrannically, and even ignores the prime minister, and has no loyalty to the emperor and patriotism. In addition to defending him and condemning the regent, some people were just watching the fun, saying that Nan 11 had already lost her innocence after entering the regent's mansion, so they didn't believe that Gu Qingshu would really not care about his reputation and marry a woman who was a broken flower and a willow. The regent had no interest in paying attention to the rumors and discussions outside, while Gu Qingshu declared righteously that he only liked Nan 11 in his life and would not marry anyone but her. He didn't care what she became, but would only feel sorry for what she had gone through. As long as there was a slight chance, he would love her, and protect her even more. This affectionate confession naturally aroused the envy of many boudoir girls, who felt that it was rare for a true gentleman like Gu Qingshu to be so infatuated. If Nan Yu was sent to the Gu mansion at this time? Qingyang nodded, thinking that this was a really good idea. Especially since Nan Yu was sent to the Gu mansion after being charged with the crime of assassinating Miss Nan 11, Qingyang thought that it was particularly worth looking forward to. "Let my subordinates handle this matter," he asked for instructions, looking at Nan 11 with sparkling eyes. "What should we say after sending Miss Nan to Gu's house?" Nan Yu was injured in the regent's house, so she must give an explanation, right? Why was she injured? Who hurt her? Outsiders will definitely be curious. If there is no logical reason, who knows how many versions of slanderous words those gossipers will make up? Tell the truth, Nan 11 said. Gu Qingshu said with certainty that he was deeply in love with Nan 11, but privately he was angry and disliked Nan 11 for losing her innocence. He wanted to sever his relationship with Nan 11 immediately, but he didn't dare to break his promise because of his reputation as a lovelorn gentleman, so he gave Nan Yu a dagger and asked Nan Yu to kill Nan 11. Ah! Qingyang was shocked. He thought he could add fuel to the fire, but he found that even after he added fuel to the fire, the plot development was not as dramatic as Nan 11's words. No matter how stupid Gu Qingshu is, he can't just give Nan Yu a dagger and let her assassinate you, young lady, right? Qingyang hesitated. If I say that, I'm afraid no one will believe it. Killing people in the regent's mansion? No one with a brain would dare to do this. Gu Qingshu's brain is better than most people, and of course he would not do such a suicidal act. Nan 11 said, it doesn't matter whether others believe it or not, just say what I say. Qingyang glanced at his master. Rong Yu nodded expressionlessly. Do it? Yes. No matter, the master told him to do it anyway, what should he hesitate about? He had long disliked that Gu Qingshu, who was not as good looking as his master, and whose status was not as noble as his master, so how could he win the heart of Miss Nan 11? The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 10. It was dark outside, and a faint fragrance floated in the air. Nan 11 leaned quietly in the bathtub, her jade-like skin was wrapped in the curling mist, her injured wrist rested on the edge of the bathtub, she closed her eyes, and quietly sorted out the clear thoughts in her mind. The world's territory is divided into 9 countries. The owner of this palace, Rong Yu, is the regent of the great Zhou dynasty, who is powerful in the court and the uncle of the current emperor. He is only 22 years old, but looking back on his half-life, he is already a myth that no one can surpass. At the age of 14, he led the army, won the first battle, and defeated the northern frontier Iron Cavalry. In the 32nd year of Emperor Jing, Rong Yu was 18 years old. The previous emperor was in poor health and bedridden. The prince's fight for the throne entered a white-hot stage. Various forces were ready to move. The previous emperor was unable to cope with it, so he ordered Rong Yu to be the regent and supervise the country. Rong Yu was the youngest brother of the late emperor. He was born later and was younger than the princes of the late emperor. He governed the country, which naturally made the princes and various court officials feel dissatisfied. However, Rong Yu was always a tough man. He used the same tactics in the military camp to regent. If you don't obey, he would suppress you with an iron fist until you obey. In just 3 months, all the dissatisfied voices in the court disappeared. This prince, who already held military power, also had the power of regent. For a while, he was powerful in the court. After the princes were dissatisfied for a while, they reacted and began to flatter and win over in disguise, sending beauties, beautiful boys, and rare treasures, just hoping that this little uncle could help them. Rong Yu almost never refused the gifts sent to his door, but never helped anyone, which always made the princes grit their teeth and hate him. The late emperor was bedridden for 3 years, and Rong Yu was regent for 3 years. During these 3 years, the court was undercurrent, and the struggle for succession never stopped. All forces tried their best to plan and pave the way for their respective masters without provoking the regent. In the spring of the 33rd year of Emperor Jing, Nan 11, the daughter of the prime minister's mansion, fell in love with the young talent Gu Qingshu, who was then the staff of the third prince Rong Qiuyun. The young talent was suave, had a good appearance, was gentle and considerate, and soon captured the heart of a girl. At that time, Nan 11 was only 12 years old, and it was the time when she was in love. How could she resist the charm of such a beautiful boy? They were young and not in a hurry to get married, but the boy's feelings were so pure. For a year, the two were together for pure poetry, wine, flowers, and tea. Nan 11 saw Gu Qingshu's talent and also saw the boy's ambition in his words and deeds, choosing a wise master to serve with loyalty and seeking the welfare of the people of the world. Nan 11 was attracted by his talent and was also moved by his ambition for the people. Later, it was so natural that at the most appropriate time, Gu Qingshu created opportunities again and again, allowing Nan 11 to coincidentally see the wise monarchy of the third prince Rong Chuiyun and his financial difficulties. How many princes who are qualified to compete for the throne are really embarrassed? It's just because of the fierce competition, they need to make arrangements everywhere, please the queen mother, please the concubines who have no princes in the palace, and use extraordinary means to bribe the court officials who have a say in the court. Nan 11's father is the prime minister, and her mother comes from a wealthy family with inexhaustible wealth. Gu Qingshu got too many conveniences. The third prince almost relied on the help of the prime minister and Nan 11 to become the one with the most chips among the princes, which also laid a strong and solid foundation for him to become the emperor later.